Welcome to the Kara's CURES show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. So America just got a big warning from the Surgeon General about something that's really hurting our long-term health. And it's actually not tobacco, drugs, or alcohol. It's loneliness. And since the pandemic, we have had an epidemic of social isolation. So joining me today is psychologist Dr. Laura Saunders about the real effects loneliness can have on our health and how we can find connection again. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
Yeah, so what are some of the key takeaways of the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on the fact that we have a lot of loneliness?
So there are several key things that I would like to highlight, but there's actually one, and I think this has gotten worse since COVID and since the global pandemic. But what I want to also sort of insert in there from my clinical experience is that isolation has gotten worse since access to social media. So it became worse during COVID because we were supposed to stay inside and not, social distance and physical distance and all those things. But, I do a lot of work with teens and young people, and I'm going to go on a teeny bit of a tangent here, and then I'm going to come back to the key takeaways because of texting and because of direct messaging and because of all those things, young people don't do what we did, which was call someone on the phone and actually hear someone's voice, hear their intonation. So if they were angry, you knew they were angry. If they were saying something that was just emphatic, they weren't angry with you, right? We miss so much in the kinds of ways that we communicate. But I'll sort of circle back to that because that really fuels this sense of isolation. And we are wired as human beings. We are, pack animals, and we're wired for social connection. But over time, and because of a variety of different factors, we've become more isolated.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly as a mom of teens, I know the battle with social media, but, I think we usually think about what they're exposed to, or we think about this. I also think about older people, our parents don't usually live with us like they might do in other countries. So what is the real danger for our health of being isolated?
We know that social isolation, and I want to sort of mix in the term loneliness here because spending time alone actually can be healthy and emotionally rejuvenating. It's when it kind of dips more into excessive loneliness or feeling like you don't have a choice, feeling like there aren't people for me to connect with, or there aren't things for me to do, or nobody likes me. It's those sort of negative self-statements that sort of tip it over from, spending some downtime on your own to really more isolation and loneliness. So for older folks, I would want them to go out and do things. But in terms of health issues, it can affect depression, it can affect anxiety, it can affect your heart health, it can affect, your overall well-being. So it really has a lot of social connection has a lot of physical benefits as well as social emotional benefits.
And I think people, really discount that, right? Because they think everything is, one is my body and one is my mind, but we're learning more and more that they're super connected. So, if you could go into a little bit more, like how does loneliness affect us, and to the point that we might be making our heart sick?
So social connection reduces the risk of premature mortality. So I've watched actually a bunch of different podcasts. I've also read the book, The Blue Zones by Dan, it'll come to me. Essentially what he did is he went around the world and he looked at what areas had the most centenarians. And so one of the factors that came out of that was social connection, right? It's the act of connecting with people on a regular basis. It reduces stress. You connect with someone for coffee in the afternoon, you meet at the town square, and you have a cup of tea or you have a cup of coffee. You say, this is how my day went, right? That's releasing things that, that really can cause stress or release stress. So it can really social connection can really influence health-related behaviors. And it's, it is equally as important as taking care of your physical health.
Yeah, and the Surgeon General report really did, demonstrate all these different ways that physical and mental health are interconnected. So we were talking about older people. Let's start there. I think we've all gotten calls from our parents of like, okay, aren't you ever going to come see me? The sandwich generation, and elderly people, they are alone a lot. Is there something to do that they can do? Because it's hard to tell them like, oh, run out and join a group, or what are some of the actions starting with older people that they could do?
So I worry most about individuals who might be widowed or who might be separated, might be living on their own. And, if certainly friendships are hard to make and sustain as adults and older adults. So it takes some work. You have to do something, right? You're not going to necessarily make friends sitting in your house. You have to join a church group, or volunteer at your local library, or volunteer for an volunteer for a soup kitchen, do something that's meaningful to you. It creates meaning in your life. It gets you out of your house. There might be some online activities to volunteer for, but really what I want people to get out of their homes, out of their comfort zones, interacting with other people. It gives you a sense of gratitude, like, wow, I'm fortunate that I have my own place to live. There are people that don't have their own place to live. Being in a library, you're surrounded by information and stimulation. So doing something that creates meaning, that helps give you a sense of gratitude. Boy, I'm fortunate I have some things in my life. Or, I wish I had more connection to my kids. They live far away. My adult children, they live far away. So you're doing things to create meaning. I don't care if it's playing bridge or, doing something, joining a group, joining a book club. There's so many book clubs that have sprung up since COVID, because it's stimulating, and then it becomes interactive. You talk about the book, you have a glass of wine, you have some appetizers, so you do something that's more interactive.
Yeah, and you're so right. It is harder to make time for friendships and to develop them when you're older. It's not like you're in school and you're in this thing every day. But I've noticed this in my own family, that my mom will, maybe be complaining that she doesn't feel good and her stomach hurts. And then if you just get her out, all of a sudden a lot of those symptoms dissipate. So sometimes there are somatic issues with just being alone.
We know that a lot of times those somatic complaints, and I don't want to invalidate, someone's stomach might hurt, or they might have a headache, or their elbow might be bothering them, or whatever, their knees are aching. Those things might really be happening. I'm not invalidating the physical pain, but the emotional experience of, taking a shower, getting out of the house, driving your car to the place where you're going to meet a friend, having lunch, going to, even if you're not volunteering at the library, going to the library, getting out of your house, creating kind of a sense of something to do. I use the term anchor event, right? So if you feel more isolated, okay, I'm going to go to the library today, or tomorrow I'm going to go to Starbucks. I'm going to order myself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. I'm going to sit there, and, they have free Wi-Fi. You can scroll. So you're at least experiencing things and seeing people. So yes, we know that somatic complaints can really manifest, or be symbolic of more emotional pain, but the more you can create distraction, the better.
Does it count if you're just going out to run errands, like grocery stores?
I'm fine with that, right? I mean, but because you're going into a store, you're hopefully going to say hello to the clerk. You're going to ask for help, right? You're doing something. It's some type of interaction. It might not be as meaningful as having coffee or tea with a friend, but at least it's something. And that's why volunteer activities are so great, because something that you do on a regular basis creates meaning. It creates connection, might even create a friendship, someone you can do something with even outside of that volunteer activity.
Yeah, we have done stories that sometimes, as long as we're looking at older adults, they tend to do better. I know they don't always want to leave their house, but sometimes in these congregate living situations, when there's no family nearby, I know I've done stories where sometimes they do better because they've got people around. At least they're all having lunch together. There's some activities, kind of friends around without having to worry about it. So staying alone in your house all the time, as you get older. Maybe not the best thing, even though I know sometimes people love to stay in that house.
Right. Well, that's comfortable, right? It's their comfort zone. It's not, but what we want to do, the way we grow emotionally and physically is by stretching ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And generally, people that run those congregate care settings know that they have to create social opportunities, right? We're going to have meals together. We're going to, have therapeutic rec activities. We need to do things to create connection, because it gets you outside of yourself and is so, so important for your physical well-being as well.
Yeah, and this was real, that loneliness increases the risk of heart disease, anxiety, high blood pressure, dementia, depression, diabetes. I mean, it was a pretty in-depth warning from the Surgeon General about we need to be social. So what about the kids who are on their devices all the time? What do you say to them?
Thankfully, kids are in school. So there's some amount of social connection that happens in the school day. It becomes a little bit more difficult based on kind of where you are. I mean, again, I hate to always make these comparisons, but when I was growing up, after school, you went out and you found someone to play with, someone to do something with. In the summers, we just went out. There was a park across the street from where I grew up, and we'd go into the park. You'd find a group of friends. You'd put a game together. It created these, meaningful activities. And again, these are stimulating activities. They develop your skills, right? Socializing and learning how to make friends are skills to be developed. So the more we can limit some screen time, I mean, the reality is we're not going to eliminate it, right? We're not going to live in a desert island where there's no Wi-Fi. We're not going to eliminate it. So we want to try to find alternate activities. Yes, you can have some screen time, but you've done something either off screens or social. It does take more work on parents' part because you might have to, set up a play date or drive your kids somewhere or do something. I do love sports and other activities because those are so, creates meaning. They're great for your body because you are being physically active. And I say all the time, I mean, very, 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 the percentage is minuscule of individuals who participate in all sorts of elementary, middle, and high school sports, or even college sports, go on to be professionals. That's not what it's about. It's about, making a connection to your body, learning about teamwork, making friends, maintaining friendships, doing things that are outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that. And I actually, that's one of the things my mom, who was a single mom, did well. She had a rule that I had to have an activity every semester, but I don't care what you do, but you pick something rather than just come home after school, because probably she knew no one was going to be there. But I never became a great athlete. I guess maybe the debate club helped me with what I do now, but just the idea of having something in your life other than just your homework and your school and then coming home and watching soap operas, or nowadays getting on your phone, is healthy. And you also talk about routines. Having just that routine is going to help.
So many high schools now really, they understand this, right? They have extracurricular activities. It doesn't have to be sports. It can be the debate club. It can be the Gay Straight Alliance. It can be the journalism club. It can be the robotics team. And robotics teams are so prevalent in so many different high schools now. And so that's a different level of creativity and connection. So the more you do, and that like on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you go to your robotics club, it creates that sense of routine. It gets you out of the house. It gets you, out of your comfort zone, but then you create new routines and you see how you can slide into, wow, I'm sad for the end of school because I won't be able to do robotics anymore, right? So there's so many different ways to create meaning to reduce social isolation.
Is it something you think we're going to see our doctors actually talk more about? I think people go and say, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, or my stomach hurts, or I don't know that anyone's ever asked too much in my world about loneliness, maybe because maybe they know that I'm married and have kids, but is there something that we need to include this more in our health conversations with our providers?
I don't work with the older adult population, but I imagine, and I have friends and colleagues who work with that population, that adding in social connection, doing something outside of your home and outside of your initial space would be a really important part of working with someone physically and or emotionally, that's really critical for that older adult population. There are more built-in mechanisms for school-age children. And then what happens for the parents of school-age children is they start to make connections with other parents of kids who are, have kids in the same grade or doing the same sport or same activity. So that's how, middle adults make connections, or they're connecting with the parents of their children's friends. And that's sort of a natural progression. And then maybe you might decide, oh, let's go out to dinner with that couple, or let's, do you want to meet for coffee sometime? So it's ways to make connection and create meaning. And you really want to look at it from a developmental standpoint, right? What you're doing when, again, postpartum, mothers of young infants, it becomes very isolating again, because you're in the house. You don't want to expose your baby to germs. I mean, they have they have baby yoga where you bring your baby to a yoga class and do other things, because it's still equally as important to reduce social isolation and improve social connection.
You just mentioned a good thing. At any age, yoga would be something that people could go and make a like-minded community. We just did a report with one of the heads of the neurological disorders over at Hartford Healthcare, where specifically studies are showing dancing helps slow the progression of Parkinson's disease, and that music really helps our brain. So even like a simple thing, I know it's not with other people, but I guess just making sure music is around you. Maybe you could go join a dance club. You don't have to be an amazing star at this, but maybe take a dance class at your local community center.
Yeah. So each town has some type of community center. They have adult ed offerings. And the town sends out to its residents what the adult ed offerings are. And it could be a dance class. It could be a yoga class. It could be a power, like a light lifting class. It could be something that gets you out of your house. There is so much live music in different, facilities. A lot of them are restaurants and bars, but if you like music, even if you start by going by yourself and going out, stretching yourself outside your comfort zone, and then you might meet or talk to someone that's next to you. And I understand that's a lot of social risk for people, but we have to create meaning. And what we know is that the more you isolate yourself, the more it worsens your physical and emotional health.
So that's an important part. Some people say, oh, I'm not a joiner. I don't do that. And you just mentioned social risk. We need to do this. We're social creatures. So the level at which we do it might vary. But what's your advice to someone who says, I'm too nervous to go without someone I know?
Creating social connection is equally as important as doing your yearly physical. It's that important. And it's okay to start small. So if you're not someone who's good at taking social risk, then do something that's a little bit more kind of set up or structured. Again, go to your local library. Every town has a library. Go to your local library and just spend some time there, right? I don't care if you can take something that you might have read or done at home. You can go to the library. You can be in the library space. You can check out a book. You can do something. All of that is taking you outside your comfort zone. It's a low level risk. And you know what? You do that every Tuesday, and then you might start to see someone that's also there regularly on Tuesdays. And you might strike up a conversation. You might say, that's funny. I've seen you here 2 Tuesdays in a row like me. Boom. That's a social connection point. And then you go from there. So it doesn't have to be high risk things, doesn't have to be going to a restaurant to listen to a band. It can be low risk things, but like going to your local library and spending some time on a regular basis, joining an activity that's in your town's kind of adult ed program, things that you can do. So those are set and structured classes, and so it requires less social risk.
Yeah, and a lot of people say I can't afford it, but many of these programs, I know that library has a lot of free gatherings. They'll often have free speakers. So all of those things, like you said, low risk, and there can be some low cost stuff. Even if you just decide I'm going to the park and you're around other people, what you're saying is we need to get out of just our 4 walls, which we've also become really comfortable with. I want to shift it to the young people, because I think all parents are concerned about, hey, we didn't grow up with this, and there's a lot of this going on. I mean, even on at dinner tables. If the kids are out to dinner together as teenagers, they all want to look at their phones. And what do you think we need to be doing if you think your kids are just not getting off the devices? They're playing video games too much. They're in the room alone too much. How do we shift that, knowing they're going to be a little resistant?
I ask all the time when I do intakes with young people, I ask, do you do things with classmates, kids at school, outside of school? That's what you want to see. It's that real, as the young people say, IRL, in real life, that real life social connection. Now, I know that for people who have serious social emotional difficulties or might have a particular handicap or other, neuroatypical issue, finding online support groups can be life-changing. And I'm not demeaning that. However, that is not the same as meeting someone in real life outside of your home, going to someone else's house, spending some time, inviting them over to your house, meeting at the park. Again, we're not talking about things that cost a lot of money, but the benefit of having one friend. You don't need a group of friends. You don't need a gaggle of friends. You need one friend, one person whom you can connect with, talk to, share experiences with, share worries, someone outside of yourself to connect with. So you don't have to be, a child that has lots of friends. As a parent, encouraging your child to establish one friendship. I know nowadays in schools, and it's been this way since the beginning of time, right? Unstructured times like, well, it used to be recess, but lunchtime is really difficult for kids who have more difficulties with social anxiety.
God bless you.
And so they just want to avoid it. They want to just, go spend time in the library or do something. I'm okay with that if that feels safe for you. But then I hope you're connecting with you're not going to the cafeteria for lunch, but I hope you're connecting with other kids who are going to the library during lunchtime also. So it's really, as parents, encouraging our kids to make one friend, one kind of connection. And then it's the effort of, well, do you want to get together with them outside of school? Do you want to do something? And sort of just kind of encouraging that next step.
Yeah, and realizing it's so important with what we're seeing is it's really important to our long-term health. I'm going to flip it just a little bit in that you mentioned that doesn't mean no alone time. And there are those of us, I'll raise my hand to this, who I guess are extroverted introverts who need a lot of downtime, who need some alone time. And that can be important too. If you're someone who's overscheduled or over out there, or you're just feeling drained, you might want to ask yourself, do I need some alone time? Because so many people, even adults, are afraid to be alone.
It is finding that balance, and it is okay, right? What's the definition of an introvert? Someone who spends time alone to store the energy to deal with social occasions, right? So I just happen to be an extrovert, right? I don't relish a lot of alone time. I get emotionally fueled by doing social things and talking to people. But it's okay to spend that downtime, to have that alone time, to have that time to yourself, to emotionally fuel yourself, to then better tolerate social time. So it is about knowing yourself, finding that balance, but it is, pushing ourselves a little bit outside our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the remote work, are you concerned because the remote work is here to stay, and so many of these young people, especially, maybe if you have a family and stuff, and it's useful for you to be home to run your kids at different times, but a lot of people might be just working alone on a computer most of the day because they're not going into an office anymore.
Yes, and and they might be very productive like that, but I think also, having to go in once a week or once every other week to do a group team meeting or something, because then you make those connections. There has been some huge benefits to remote work in terms of cost and, reducing access to, like, for mental health. It's been amazing to reduce access, right? 3 years ago, I didn't even know there was anything such as telehealth. We never did it. And now, it can improve access to care. So there are some benefits, But I just talked to a parent the other day who was, coming from Fairfield County, who wanted to come up here. And I said, listen, I am willing to do telehealth, but you're talking about a teenager. I need to at least see that person in person several times before I will do telehealth, because there's so much information that I get from meeting with someone face to face that I need sort of that foundation in order to have a better telehealth relationship. But that's my bias, right? I know there's providers out there that are just doing telehealth. But I personally think it's a disservice if you can't have some, face-to-face interaction. And when we talk about young people, developing social skills is a life skill. Because when you're working in an office, I mean, there's not a lot of jobs that you can just work remotely all the time, but you have to learn to interact with other people. You have to learn to get along with other people, with a manager and with coworkers, or if you're a manager, supervise other people. So these skills are life skills when we talk about social skills.
So the takeaway is all the research is showing that, well, number one, we have a loneliness epidemic. So we're more socially isolated than we ever have been, but that having connection, social connection, is actually as crucial to our long-term survival as food and water.
Absolutely. And I just was thinking about this, I see people in my neighborhood, sometimes actually having a dog and walking a dog gets you out, and then you meet the other people that are walking a dog, or it gets you out of your house, it gets you caring for something or someone else. So doing something that creates meaning and takes you out of your comfort zone and gets you out of your house. You can have your downtime, you can rejuvenate yourself, but it's beautiful weather outside. Get outside, go for a little walk. When you're passing by the other dog walker, you say hi, you say, what kind of dog do you have? What's your dog's, right? It's all that creates meaning. And then I happen to see them every Wednesday, because, you always go out at noontime on Wednesdays to walk your dog. And, again, and then it's like, hey, would you like to have a cup of coffee sometime? It's doing things. I mean, that's the social risk part that's harder for people, but it's doing things that create meaning. It is vital for your physical health, because social isolation is gasoline on the fire of depression.
Yeah, really. And we're going to have to leave it there for timing. But yeah, even just the headline right now that came across my phone, Hartford Current, that the city leaders are now approving some more programs because too many kids in Hartford are suffering from nature deficit disorder, that they're spending too much inside alone on their phones. So I've never heard of it called nature deficit disorder. They want them outside.
I've never heard of that either.
But it's a new term. So we need social connection, and we need to be outside, and we really can't live. They say the future is artificial intelligence, but as far as humans are concerned, we need to connect with other humans.
Yes, it actually, it's written up in the all the literature to help with longevity and physical health.
Well, we'll leave it there for timing. Thank you so much, Dr. Saunders, for being with us. You can follow me at Kara Sundlin on every platform. We like to share this content there. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.